मुल्क तरक्की कर रहा है जी, तब्दीली आ गई है। अब आप देख सकते हैं कि हमारे यहाँ डांसर गोरियाँ मौजूद है, गोरियाँ नहीं गोरी।
Today I'm with Lewis Haskins. Lewis Haskins is a filmmaker and a photographer from Australia. I was lucky enough to get a chance to shoot with him, and I have learned a lot of things from him. So this is our third meeting, and right now we are in the walled city of Lahore, and we're gonna shoot some portraits, and I'm gonna ask Louis a lot of questions, I think, which will be beneficial for you too. I'm gonna ask him about how does he shoot and which equipment does he use and what are his shooting techniques, and first of all I'm gonna ask him about Pakistan.
Yo,
What brings you to Pakistan?
it's one of the places I'd wanted to come for a really long time, and I've been in Central Asia for like 8 months now, and even though it's not the perfect season, I thought it was time to finally come here. So here I am.
How many days have you spent in Pakistan?
25, I think.
And which places have you been so far?
I started in Lahore, went to Hunza, hung around in Hunza for about 4 or 5 days, went and did the Lake Glacier Suspension Bridge, and then hitchhiked back down to Gilgit and across to Bisham, and then up through the Swat Valley into Chitral. Stayed in Chitral with a couple of guys for like 2 days, and then went across to the Kalash Valley for the festival, which was amazing. And then I was in there staying with the Kalash people for a few days, and then came back down to Lahore yesterday.
And what is your favorite place in Pakistan?
Oh, that's a hard question. I mean, Hunza is incredibly beautiful because of the mountains and the lake. Like, scenery-wise, that would be my favorite. Culturally, we're definitely gonna get hit by a car. Culturally, I would say the Kalash and Chitral. Chitrali people were really beautiful, and the Kalash was like a small tribe, 3,800 people, was absolutely incredible. You know, like really, really beautiful experience.
So are you coming back to Pakistan?
Yeah. I love hiking and camping, and I didn't really get to do any of that. Even though I've got my tent with me, it was just so cold in the north. So yeah, I think maybe summer might be a good time. No, I've got so this is my 28 to 135 film lens. This is, I think this is my go-to lens. Like it's a very expensive. It's like a $3,500 lens, and the film quality is amazing. I shot my documentary on this. I have a 14mm 2.8, which I use for stars. It's a really nice wide. 300 for wildlife, which I do a lot of stuff in Africa. And then the 1.8 85, which is my portrait, for sure. ND filters, which are a pain to carry around because they're so big. Drone, which is here, and all the drone equipment. And then just cleaning equipment, flash is in here, which I rarely use as well. Yeah, that's about it. And then just bits and pieces, time-lapse timers, things like that, spare drone propellers.
So how do you carry that much stuff when you travel?
Well, with that and the tripod and my other bags, it was really difficult, especially horse riding in Mongolia. I had to lift it all onto a horse when I was doing solo riding. So yeah, it's not easy. It's not been an easy 8 months of walking around for sure. It makes you strong though. I've sort of always worked on my filmmaking on the road, on the run, and to try and take it to the next level, I've really started thinking about like pre-planning shots. You know, it's hard as a travel photographer. it's quite easy to shoot what you see. But travel films, like, you've got to capture the moment and you have to be in the right spot. You know, you don't really get the opportunity to ask people to go back and do something again. Like, you have to capture it at that moment, which is what I've always done. But now I'm trying to think about setting shots up that are more visually interesting and telling a bit more of a story rather than just, I move the camera too much, so trying to set up shots that are static but that tell an important message. So I'm kind of shooting less but trying to shoot far better quality of shot. So.
How did you came into filmmaking and photography?
That's a good question. So I was living in Tanzania in Africa, and I had just a little point and shoot, which was, I don't know, I just kind of got into traveling. Like, I traveled to heaps of different countries, got into like point and shoot photography, started editing, and then pretty much did a hitchhiking trip from the east coast to the west coast of Africa. And when I stopped up at a few beautiful places, but I got to Uganda and there were mountain gorillas there. And there's a French photographer there that was being paid by a magazine to come out, right out into the Burundi impenetrable forest and shoot these like incredible pictures for a magazine. So it's kind of when I decided that I wanted to take my art and turn it into, you know, more than just a hobby and a passion, and to make it a living. So I had a little bit of money saved. I had enough money to maybe look at buying a house in Australia, and instead I bought this. So, and I just traveled and taught myself a lot. I have a few friends in the industry, and now I'm at the stage where I'm just starting to get paid to work from the country. So it's been a long road. It's been like the better part of 4 years already, volunteering and doing things for companies, and yeah, but if you do what you love, then it's not work, I guess. The pictures and videos are very different. So, you know, processing a raw image is, I use Lightroom. I started being an editor before I was a good photographer, I think. So what really happened was I would shoot bad photos and then develop really good editing skills, but my photos were never quite there. So I think the most important thing is to shoot the photo well, make sure you expose correctly, make sure the light's where you want it to be, put it into Lightroom, and then I go through a series of like basic corrections with exposure. Because it's a raw image, add in a contrast curve, contrast the image where I'd like it to be. Then I move on to color contrast, make sure that the tones of the colors, the saturation, the hue is where I want it to be. Make sure that, I usually desaturate images a little bit when you add contrast, so that's a lot of saturation. And then play with the various arty factors like add in split toning, crop the image how you want. Paint highlights onto faces, things like this with portrait photography. I usually write a shot list before I shoot. I think about the cuts that I want. I then go through the process of shooting and grabbing those cuts that I want, import it in, chuck the music that I want in over or the narration, and make the edit snappy, which is really important. And then once I've got the edit that I like the music, I do like sound production on either like voices or my own music. Then I start to like do the cinematography stuff where I will color grade and make cuts that way. I say that the first 10,000 photos that you shoot are your worst, so shoot often and you will get better. Do research. I'm meticulously bad at researching, so preparation is key. Research with equipment. I mean, you know more about equipment than I do, so know what you want to shoot with. Know exactly what you need in terms of like your job. So what microphone you need, what lenses you want. Tip number 3 is like preparation for the art. So especially with filmmaking, like photography is a bit easier. You shoot you see the shot and you sit there and take it. Filmmaking is really, really difficult. So you really need to have a shot list down. I'd never believed in shot lists, and it wasn't until I worked with a filmmaking friend that sat down and storyboarded certain sections of documentary film work that I realized that I needed to start storyboarding. So, learning things like 3-act narratives and having a plan for your shots is incredibly important. Business name is Sonda Media. Sonda is a new buzzword that's been created. One of those words that means a concept, and the concept is, that each person that you come across in the street, a person that drives past you, a person that you see in the window, it's the realization you have that they're living a life that's as, vivid and as extravagant as your own. So what that means to me is that it takes you outside of being the center of your universe, and you start to appreciate that everybody is living a really, really interesting life. And I think photography and videography, both of those focus on telling important stories, and it's that feeling that you try and uncover something, especially with travel videography and photography, whether you go and see tribes or people, is that you're trying to tell these stories visually of these complex social situations, or the relation to other people, or people and wildlife, or nature. So for me, the art is really, really important, but also the story behind it is something that's really, really valuable as well. And that's why I think sometimes influencers rush to tell a million stories at once, but with me, I try and sit down and focus on what's the main story and how am I going to tell this story. And for me, it's a much slower art, but it's at the essence of photography and filmmaking is light and stories, for sure. Here, the hospitality of the people, couch surfing, I've couch surfed in many different countries, but here it's still something like it was in its origin. People are incredibly hospitable. I can't walk down the street without, I can't even pay for my own groceries. Somebody else runs up and says, "You're a guest in my country, I'm paying for this." When you couch surf with people here, it's not just couch surfing, they're buying you meals, they're driving you around, they're showing you, and it's part of the culture here. I know it's part of the religion too. Someone said to me the other day that visitors are a gift from Allah, and this is why people are like this. But I haven't experienced hospitality like this, for sure. It's been incredible.